Hi, this is Michelle from Uniquely Michelle, and today I'm going to do a video tutorial on how to make this side of the Kristine ID wallet. There are already a couple of video tutorials out there on how to make the ID pocket window, which is on the other side, but we're going to work on this side today. So this side has the flap, the envelope flap, and then it also has underneath that two card slot pockets. So anyway, we're going to work on that today and see about, I'll give you some tips and tricks on things that I do as I'm working on making this side of the Kristine ID wallet. So thanks a lot for joining me, and I'm excited to get started. Okay, here we are. I have all the pieces cut out for this side of the Kristine ID wallet. And the side has the card pockets, and that's what this piece is we will fold up to make the card pockets. This is the side of the card pockets, and those pieces combined will make this side of the Kristine ID wallet. Then that's where this piece of fusible fleece will come in. We'll put that on the back of that once it's all put together. Then we also have the exterior piece for the flap and the interior piece for the flap. And then we also have this little piece of fabric, which will be our keyring loop, and that's what the keyring will go on. Now I have some other little things here in the middle, and so the instructions for the Kristine ID wallet call for a magnetic snap, and this is, I use a nice thin small magnetic snap like this. It looks blue, but that's just a covering to protect it. You can see when I take that blue off, it's nice and shiny. So these I get from Emmeline bags, and when I originally wrote the pattern, I wrote it to use, see it's very magnetic, I wrote it to use to install the magnetic snap. Some people have concerns about credit cards and everything with the magnet, and I've never had an issue. There's actually evidence out there that there is not an issue. It has to be a much stronger magnet than this. So I've never had an issue, but I also know that the instructions tell you how to put in this magnetic snap, and I'm going to, I'll talk about it when we get to that point, but I'll just kind of reinforce what the instructions say. I'm going to go ahead and do an alternative method this time and use this metal snap, and this snap I got from Snap Source. And so anyway, it's slightly different. There's a couple little variations, and that's why I want to go ahead and use this snap instead so that we can go over the variations. So we're all set and ready to go. So our next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and start making the card slot pockets. Okay, let's get started with our card pockets. I have pretty much everything I need here for this. I need straight pins. And when I say, excuse me, straight pins, I mean straight, not bent. For part of this, we do need them to be really straight because they're going to help us mark a line. So I need straight pins. I use clips for part of it too because I really like clips. They don't poke me, which pins do, and I don't like that. So anyway, but you can use pins for the entire thing if you want. We'll be using both. I have a Frixion pen, and these are nice because they erase with the heat of an iron. They do sometimes leave kind of like a shadow mark though, if you do it on the right side of the fabric. So I usually use these only if I'm using it on the back of the fabric or on the interfacing or someplace on the fabric where it's not going to be seen. So we're good to go on this because it's the back of the fabric. The most important tip I would say at this point is you're marking these lines on the back side of your card pocket piece is that you really make sure that you that everything is really square. So I'm not only measuring from the top edge down, but I'm also looking at the sides and making sure that they are nice and straight, and so that I'm getting a really good straight line across so I don't end up with my card pockets being all wonky and misshapen and everything else. So I'm almost done. I'm making 4 lines here. That's all we need. Now I have this on the pattern. If you want, you can go ahead and number these lines. after I've made these several times, I don't feel the need to do this, but you certainly can do this. Helps keep it straight. The even lines, the line 2 and line 4, those are the lines that we're going to be using pins to mark. And the reason we need to do that is, like on line 4, this is going to be folded this way. I can't see where that line is. So I need to be able to have some way to see that line from the right side of the fabric. And so what I'm going to do is use pins. I'm actually going to work on line 2 here first. So what I do is I poke a pin through so that it is going right on the line, going in and out right on the line here. So you can see that. And what that does is it makes it so that I can have a line on this side. The other thing you'll notice I do when I do this, I'm going to do it on the other side too, I don't go in and then just come right back out, just a quarter inch later or something like that. I really try to go back in quite a ways away from where, or come back up, I guess, quite a ways away from where I went down. And the reason for that is you want as much of that pin to mark the other side, to mark your line on the other side of the fabric, on the right side, so that you can see what you're doing. So there we go. Oh, finally got it. Okay, so you can see I have those 2 pins in, going in and out right on the line, and then when I turn over here, those pins make a nice straight line for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on 4, and we'll come back and fold. All right, I have all my pins in place so that I have straight lines marked for this side. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start folding. I want to start with the line 1, but I'm going to flip it over to do this. So I flip it over, and I'm going to go ahead and take the bottom edge and bring it all the way up till I see line 1 here. And I'm going to go ahead and press it so that line 1, I'm doing that fold right on line 1. So put this a little bit more centered. So there's line 1. Now this is where I use clips. You can use pins, but I'm going to use clips. So I'm going to clip right here, right next to that fold, to keep that fold in place. Okay, now line 2, this is where the pins come in handy. I'm going to go ahead and pull this fabric back this way, and in doing so I will expose these pins on this side, and I put those pins that are making, center of them are making lines, I put those lines right at the top, and I'm finger pressing. I start in the middle, and then I start taking out one pin and the other pin, finger pressing as I go. So once again, I'm going to use clips to hold this together, hold this fold in place, and I just kind of like to clip so that the fold is kind of right in the middle of the clip. If I was putting pins, I just put them right near the edge of the fold to hold it in place. Now the fabric's kind of going up and over this clip. I'm just going to go ahead and open up this clip and put that fabric underneath there. Excuse me. Now I'm going to pull this fabric back again until I can see this line number 3 and line number 3. I get to see it as I finger press for it. So I put that right on the fold. Finger press that. I'm going to use more clips. Actually, no, I'm not going to use more clips. This is the one where I usually just take this and I move it over a little bit so that it's close to this fold and it's still holding in that other fold from before. So do that there. Make sure this is, there we go, nicely done. So it's still holding that first fold that's on the underside and this fold. Now I get to pull this back again and use these pins that are making my nice lines for me. And once again, just keep finger pressing. And there we go. Right, and I am going to use new clips for this one. Put these right here, like this. And I'll once again get this piece of fabric underneath there. So now these, okay, this clip, yes, is a little broken. It's not holding things very well. I put a different clip on there. There we go. Okay, so now this is what my card slot pockets look like. And so what I'm going to do is take it over to the iron and just give it a good press, and I can take off my clips then while I do that. So I'm going to go give this a quick press, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, I have my card pockets all ready to top stitch. I have already pressed them, and I removed the clips that we had to hold the folds in place. So I'm ready to top stitch. I like to use a little bit longer stitch than my normal construction stitch, and I like to go 1/8 of an inch away from the folds. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I have a sewing machine foot. It's the number 10 on my Bernina machine. It's supposed to be for hemming, but I use it for this, and it works really well. I can just put my needle all the way to the left and go ahead and do a nice top stitch with it. It's about 1/8 of an inch away from the fold. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here, all the way across. I did a little back stitch start at the start and the end, and trim my threads. And I'll do the same thing on this pocket top as well. And the one thing I will say that is a little different because of the snaps that we're going to use, since we're using the metal snaps, I'm not going to go ahead and do the top stitch along these edges to hold the pocket folds in place. So we're going to have to be kind of careful as we move forward, but we don't want to have those actually held down in place because it would make it a little difficult to put in the snaps. So I'll go ahead and do this second top stitch, and then we'll go ahead and work on getting that snap in there. Okay, we're back again, and I have my card pockets with the top stitch across both pockets. I did not stitch down the sides, and the reason I didn't do that is because when we install the metal snap, we need a little bit more room. If you're installing a magnetic snap, like what is suggested in the pattern, you can actually stitch those down, which keeps them a little bit more, it keeps everything together, so you don't have to worry about things shifting. So we're going to have to be a little careful. I've already actually cut off the excess off the bottom, so I just measured from the top and cut off at the point where I was supposed to according to the pattern. So I've done that. So now our card pockets are at the right height, and so we're ready to mark the placement for the snap and put in the snap. No matter what type snap you use, the placement of it is exactly the same. You're putting it in the center. The placement is for the center of the snap, so that's the same no matter what snap you use. It's always the center of the snap. So if it's a magnetic snap, which is what the instructions call for the Kristine ID Wallet, you can make the mark, use this to mark your where you need to make the slits for the prongs. You want to be really careful to not make the slits all the way through. That wouldn't be good. You just want through the single layer. I also have this little piece of interfacing that I like to add. I add about half of this to the inside here to give it a little bit more stability. And I'm going to do that also when I add the metal snap. So we're not going to add the magnetic snaps. I'm going to set that aside. I am going to go ahead and just cut a little square off of here and place this where I'm going to be placing my snap. I am going to be marking for my snap here, and so once I go ahead and get this actually fused into place on the back side, I'm going to mark for my snap. Using my marker, I can do that because it's going to be covered up by the snap itself here. And actually, I have the wrong side of the snap there. We're actually not going to be installing that snap, that part of the metal snap. We will be installing this part of the metal snap. So anyway, so this is what will be seen on this side. So anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and mark for all of that, and then I'll briefly show you how to put in the this part of the metal snap. Okay, I've added my little square of interfacing, and I have also marked for the center of the this part of the snap. I didn't mark it on this side because it's actually, with this metal snap, it's easier to see to have it marked on the other side, and that's because on the other side, that's where this ring is going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my card pockets, and I'm going to place this so it is nicely centered. There we go, just like that. Once it's nicely centered, I kind of push on it and hold it and flip it on over, and I want to poke those prongs through. I like using this pen again, works really well. So this kind of rubbery point works really well to poke in the middle, or push in the middle to get those little prongs to poke through. So once I have my prongs through, then I'm going to use my snap setter attaching tool. So I have to take it apart. And I start with this bottom piece, and I go ahead and place this circle of the snap within here. So I'm going to kind of do it like this. If I need to, I'll make sure my prongs are poked through again. And then I'm going to go ahead and place this centerpiece over the top, like this. All right, and then I place this piece, the male part of the snap there. This is what's gonna, when I hit this with the hammer, that's gonna push everything into place. So I just put this over the top like that. And then I'm gonna mute the sound for a minute here, hopefully. And I'm gonna give this a few whacks, and we'll have that snap piece in place. You can see why I need this open. It would be really hard for me to try to fit this tool up in here if all this was folded and attached on the sides. So that's why we have it that way. So okay, let me see about muting this so that it's not too loud. Actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and, you don't need to watch me whack this. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the video, and I'll come back once my snap is all in place. Okay, a couple quick whacks of the hammer, and you can see that I have my snap in place. So we are ready to move on. You can at this point go ahead and sew these sides down. I will have to admit that I am going to go ahead and just clip these side pieces on just like this, and I'll go ahead and do a really quick 1/4 inch seam allowance down there. Oh, yes, that's what I do next. 1/4 inch seam allowance down there. So I'm going to go ahead and put on clips, and I'll go ahead and sew, and then we'll come back and be ready to add our interfacing. So we'll talk about that really quick, or the fusible fleece. So we'll talk about that really quick once I get these two side pieces sewn on. Okay, I sewed the side pieces on here with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I need to press these back, and I have my fusible fleece here. I'm going to set it aside for a second. I'm going to press these back like this. Press them nice and open. And then it would seem really obvious to go ahead and top stitch here now. If you're going to top stitch, and you should top stitch, but I'm not doing it yet. I'm going to add this fusible fleece, and the reason for that is that I don't want to, this is not going to fuse on super well because it has all these layers and folds and everything else. It's not going to fuse on well. It'll fuse on decently, and that's what we need. But then when I top stitch that, and also when I end up putting on the flap on the other side, all those stitches are going to go all the way through. That'll help hold this in place. So you're not going to have an issue with this, but you do kind of want those extra stitches to help hold it in place. I find that if I spray my fusible fleece, that helps a whole lot. So I'm doing that first, and then a lot of good pressure here. Keep pushing. I end up wiggling. Wiggling doesn't help really, it's just the pressure. Okay, let's see what we have here. Now my iron works really well to press from this side. I've never had a problem with it with the fleece, but I know that that can be a problem. So anyway, I'm going to press it some from this side too. But once again, with all these, I can spray it a little bit, but with all these folds and layers, it just is not going to fuse on there the way it would when you're normally doing like one layer of fabric. This is wiggling a whole lot. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay. Let's see what we got here. So it's fused decently. Okay, it's not great. It's probably not fused in the middle here, but it's fused enough. And then, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go over to my machine and do my top stitches 1/8 of an inch away on both these sides. And then we'll be ready to work on the flap. Okay, so I have done my top stitching here. So, and as I said before, that helps keep this fusible fleece kind of in place. So at this point, we're done with this part of this side of the Kristine ID Wallet. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside. And then I have my flap pieces. And that's the next part we're going to work on is the flap. I have already, for both of these, turned them down 1/4 inch at the top. So 1/4 inch down, wrong sides together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, first of all, if I were going to be putting in a magnetic snap, that would actually be going on the lining side of the flap. It'd be going on the lining side of the flap. I would measure for it. It has you measure from the folded edge down to get the correct placement for the snap. I would put the mark for that and put it through. I would also add, once again, an extra little piece of interfacing back here. So I'd get that all in place now. The difference, huge difference now, instead of the magnetic snap, which actually it would be this part of the magnetic snap that I'd be installing here, instead of installing the metal snap now, the metal snap, because of this pretty side, is going to go all the way through. We want this pretty, dropping everything, we want this pretty snap to be showing on this side. So we're actually going to be adding that later. The other difference too then is because it's going to go through all these layers, which is 2 layers of fabric, a layer of shape flux, and a layer of fusible interfacing, or fusible fleece, that's plenty of layers. I don't need to add any another little piece of shape flux. That's just not necessary. So I'll set that aside. So first thing now that we're going to be putting it in the metal snap later, the next thing we need to do is get these pieces sewn together. And so I'm going to go ahead and put them right sides together, and I'm going to clip around everything except for this top edge. I'm going to leave the top edge open for turning, and it just works well. The thing that I would really say here is you really want to make sure that these at the 1/4 inch seam line here, you want to make sure that those two folds are matching really nicely. So I'm going to put my clips over here, and then here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and clip around. So it seems like it's a little off there, but that's okay. I just really want to make sure that these are clipped well here at these folds, and then I will go ahead and clip the rest of these edges. Clipping the clips, and then I will sew around all of these sides except for this top folded edge. I will keep open. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I will give you a couple hints as I go when I'm sewing. So I'll meet you over at my machine. Okay, so I have my flap all clipped together and ready to sew. I'm going to sew around these edges. And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I think, and not that it's that difficult, but I think the most difficult part to this is making these corners, making sure that you're turning at a 1/4 inch. So kind of what I find is, and this might just be me, but I have a tendency to want to stop a little early and turn, and I end up with more than a 1/4 inch. So I don't know. I just find that if I go kind of one more stitch beyond what I think I should, that's usually the amount that I should actually go. So I hope that makes sense. Going to go ahead and come down to the point here, and same thing. It also helps, of course, with the interfacing. Once again, yeah, I need to go a little bit further. It helps with the interfacing to kind of follow the interfacing. My interfacing happens to be a little short on this. Usually it's closer to the 1/4 inch line, but a little short on this. So, but that's okay. That's not going to be a problem. All right, and so I have one more side to go here. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and clip my strings off, just like this. All right, and now I'm ready to turn it right side out, except actually I'm not going to turn it right side out without, I need to trim these corners. And so I'm going to just go ahead and take my scissors here and trim really close to those points. Hopefully you can see here, really close to those points, just like this. There we go. All right, that a little bit more straight. Not that it makes too much difference. So anyway, so I've done that. Then I'll go ahead and turn this right side out. So I will get that done. You'll want to use, I have a couple different tools that I use as I'm turning. One is, grab it really quick. This is kind of like a chopstick. I actually got it with some, I'm trying to think what it's called. The stuff you use to stuff, like stuffed animals. So anyway, it comes in that. So I use that for turning. I also use this. It has a nice sharp point. And one other thing I use for turning, this has a really nice point, is this. And I love this tool. It's called that purple thing. You have to say it with a southern accent. So it's that purple thing. So anyway, so those are my turning tools. So once I get this turned right side out, we'll go ahead and come back, and it'll be time to get that snap in place. Okay, we're back again, and I have turned my flap right side out. So it's all ready to go here. I think I said I was going to put the snap on next, and that's not true. We need to top stitch around this edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a top stitch 1/8 of an inch away, and that will close this top part. So I have one quick tip that I want to tell you as I'm closing this top part. So I'm using that purple thing again. It comes in handy because right here, so we get to focus on that. Yeah, there we go. So these right here kind of have a tendency to want to stick up a little bit. And so before I start sewing, and it's much easier if it's laying down on my sewing table, but before I start sewing, I use this and kind of poke those things down in there so that as I sew, they're not sticking up at all. So, and I do the same thing when I get to the other end here. There we go. I'm going to push those things down in there. You can kind of see how I'm doing it there. Get those things pushed down in so that when I sew, they're not sticking up over this nice fold. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick. So that's what I'm doing right now, is poking those little folded ends in there so that they stay down the way they're supposed to. And then go ahead and go just sew across here. This purple thing always works, or purple thing. It really is called that purple thing. Also comes in handy as I'm doing this if the top is a little bit higher, or the bottom, if the lining's a little bit higher, I can kind of poke and prod with this thing. So the purple thing. So here we go, all the way across. I'm getting to this point again where I'm going to push these guys down in. I can kind of use it to hold that down. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn. And to do one more stitch. See, I tell you, I need to do that one more stitch usually. I'm going to turn it. One other little tool that I like to use is called this is a tool by Bernina, and it's called the height compensation tool. And I've done a blog post on this thing. So anyway, you can see how my foot is going to have to climb up onto here, and that can make it so that my stitches end up being smaller. And if I put this underneath there, it flattens out my foot, and it will just go ahead and make nice stitches still. So I have to remember to keep my hand out of the way. There we go. So I'll do it again here. I'll turn. I'm going to stick this behind here, straighten out that foot, and just go ahead and sew line. You can see it just kind of flips out when it's out of the way when it's done. Let's see if there we go. One more. There. And last one right here. I'm using my tool here, my that purple thing tool, to kind of get my lining into shape where I want it. There we go, back stitch. All right, so I'm ready to clip all my threads. And then, there we go. So I have a nice flap with the top stitching all the way around. Same with this side. And so it looks, I think it looks pretty cute. So now it's time to add the snap. So I'll go over to my cutting table because that's my favorite place to work on that. So here's our flap. We've top stitched all the way around, which closed that open top edge right there, and we're ready to install the snap. I have already marked for my snap right there, and as I said before, if you're installing a magnetic snap like what the pattern asks for, you would have already done that. This part of the snap would already be installed on this side, and you would not see it through this side because you would have installed it before you even put these two exterior and interior pieces together. So but since we're doing the metal snap, we're going to go ahead and put that in now. You want to see that pretty enamel color of the snap, so it's going to go all the way through the entire flap. So I have it marked with the metal snap now. I'm going to center the snap over that mark, which is kind of hard to see because the snap is solid. So I'm kind of leaning down here. I know you can't see me doing this, but I'm leaning down and trying to make sure that that mark, I'm looking through the prongs, making sure that that mark is centered for that snap. So I think I am happy with where that is. So I'm going to, once I'm happy, I push, give it a little push to kind of get those prongs set into the fabric, and I'm going to flip it over once again using the end of my pen here to poke those prongs all the way through. And you don't have to have a huge amount of the prongs showing. It's best to have the prongs showing through a little bit, poking through all the layers. So there we go, there's the prongs. So now I'm going to be using my Snap Source Snap Setter tool. And once again, starting with this bottom part, I'm going to take this round part of the snap and put it into this indented round part of the snap setter tool. Then I put on the middle piece, and the middle piece is going to be what holds everything all together. Then I need to look at my snap here, and I want to make sure I'm using the correct side. And there goes my iron. Don't need that anymore. Well, not at the moment. So the correct side has, it's really hard to see, but it has almost like a flower shape around the edge. This is the incorrect side. This is the correct side. So honestly, I don't know that you can see that in the video. You can also see maybe how the wrong side is bumped up a little bit more here, and here it isn't. Once again, really hard to see. But this side right here is the side that needs to be up. Double checking it when I can see it up closer. There we go. Okay, that's definitely the correct side. So I'm going to put this in that little hole, and that helps keep it all positioned well. And then I'm going to put this over the top, and once again, so this is the exact same tool I used to put in the other part of the snap. Once again, I'm going to just go ahead and use my hammer and get this 2 or 3 good whacks. And I'm going to do this off video so you don't have to hear me whacking this thing. And then when I come back, we'll have our Snapple installed, and we just have, I guess, a couple more steps and we'll be all done. So we're almost done. So I'll be back with the snap installed in just a minute. Okay, I have the snap installed, and you can see how cute that is. It looks great. So now I just need to put the flap onto this piece. The best way to do it to make sure it's going to snap well is to snap it on. So go ahead and snap it on. Make sure it's nice, and it should be centered. It should be such that this is parallel to this upper edge as much as possible. So that looks great. I happen to have, so you can pin it in place, obviously. I happen to have some nice long clips here. And so I like to use these and just clip that in place. And then I'm going to go over to my machine and put, sew this in place. And I'm going to sew right on top of this stitching that I did before. So just 1/8 of an inch from the top. I really want to make sure that at either end I go back and forth to make it so that, you know, I mean, this flap's going to get used. So you want to make sure that it's nice and sturdy in there, on there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that into place. And then the last thing that we're going to be doing is adding on the keyring loop, and we'll be putting that together. So we're almost done with the sides. So I'm going to go sew this in place, and then we'll go ahead and work on getting the keyring loop all ready to go. Okay, I've sewn my flap in place just by going back over those stitches up there, and so it's nice and secure. And so we're set with that. So the last thing we need to do is the keyring loop. That's right here. So all we need to do with this is, if you've ever done a strap for the Kristine ID Wallet or a lot of other straps, a lot of them are folded and pressed this way. So I'm going to fold it in half, just like that, and press it. And then I fold these edges. Now it's a square, so it kind of, I make my folds across the fabric. You can kind of see this is the head of an owl. This is the feet of an owl. I do it across the fabric because of how it's going to attach. You want it kind of, it would make sense to do it that way. So anyway, so even though it's a square, I do kind of have a directional way of doing it. There we go. And once I get both of those edges in place, I go ahead and fold it back like this, There we go. Now I will have to say, when I'm making a Kristine ID wallet, because this gets folded the same way as the wrist strap, the lanyard, and actually the zipper ends, I fold all of the and press all of them at the same time, so that I just am kind of at the iron, at my ironing board, just ironing away, getting those all folded and put together at the same time. And then I kind of do all the top stitching for them, not so much the zipper ends, but I do the top stitching for the rest of them kind of at the same time, just because it kind of makes sense. So since we're concentrating just on getting this side of the wallet done, today I'm not going to worry about doing that right now, but just a little tip, if you're, I figure if I'm at the ironing board and everything's being folded the same way, I might as well just keep going. So anyway, so the next thing we need to do right now is we need to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away on either side of these. That will close this up and just add a pretty top stitching, and then we'll go ahead and place it in the spot it needs to go on this side of the wallet. So I'm going to go ahead and do my top stitching really quick and my placement of this, and then we'll be done with this. All right, last thing is our keyring loop. And so I'm going to just go ahead and top stitch around this thing really quick. I actually do not need to top stitch around the whole thing. These short edges don't need to be top stitched, but I go ahead and top stitch across one of them just because it's silly to kind of start and stop with that. So anyway, I will just go ahead and do that. Do a quick stitch across here so that I can stitch up this long side again. There we go. And like I say, I could stitch the short side, but I don't really need to, so I don't. Go ahead and clip my threads. Okay, so I have a nice top stitch there. I'm going to fold it in half and place it on the side with the envelope flap of my Kristine ID wallet. So if you excuse me, the pattern calls for using a keyring through the loop, and which is kind of nice because you can add that at the very end, because you just have to, you can open up separate the keyring and add it onto the loop. If you are using a D-ring, which some people do, you need to put that D-ring on now. So I'm using a keyring, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to go ahead and measure, and this isn't totally critical. Actually, some people will put this halfway in between on this side, halfway down on this side. I'm not putting it halfway down. I put it a little ways down. I kind of like to tuck it underneath the flap and make sure that'll kind of hold it down a little bit. Hold it in place, helps me out. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sew this in place. I'm using my height compensation tool again to make my stitches nice. I'm only doing 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here because I don't, this is just holding it on until I put the whole wallet together. So there we go. So I don't want it a 1/4 inch because I don't want these stitches to be seen later. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my threads again. I am a thread trimmer as you go type person. So there we go. Excuse me. So now that's in place and it's all ready to go. So we are now finished with this entire side of Kristine ID Wallet. I'm going to back this up just a little bit so I can show you a little bit more. So we've got the ring loop in place. We have the flap in place with our nice snap, the pockets. It's all ready to go. So there you go. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope it's helped a lot. And please comment below if you have any questions or comments. I would love to help you. Thanks a lot.